Today's story is filled with disturbing unknowns. Over the past few months, more than a dozen bodies have been discovered across a relatively small area. What happened to them? Who did this? In some cases, investigators can't even determine the victim's gender or age. Police are releasing minimal information, sticking to dry official statements and brief press releases. The whole situation feels like a jigsaw puzzle with missing pieces. Someone has either hidden or lost crucial details. We're left with only fragments that paint a deeply troubling picture. What secrets is New England hiding? Or maybe the better question is, who is hiding in New England? There's a lot to unpack here. We'll be covering the crimes themselves, and fair warning, there will be many names and disturbing details, the media response, how the investigations are being handled, and even Taylor Swift's connection to all of this. This is going to be a long and gripping video, and I want to hear your thoughts about this story and the New England serial killer in the comments below. Thanks for stopping by my channel, and thanks for subscribing and sharing my videos with your friends. It really helps grow the channel. Hit that like button as you watch, and let's dive into this case together. New England is a region on the East Coast that includes 6 states: Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Vermont. You could call New England the birthplace of America. It's where the first European settlers landed all those centuries ago. The first colony was established in Plymouth back in 1620. You can still feel that old world charm today. Wooden houses tucked away among maple trees, tiny historic cemeteries covered in moss. And New England's natural beauty is incredible. The Appalachian Mountains rise up in the north, sandy beaches stretch along the coast, and secluded coves draw visitors from everywhere. The climate is continental. Winters are cold and snowy, especially up north. In some places, snow can stick around until spring, while summers are warm and pleasant. That's why this region has long attracted not just tourists, but celebrities too. Taylor Swift has a house here in Rhode Island, and we'll circle back to her later. Overall, it's a wealthy region. Household incomes here consistently beat the national average. The towns are cozy and green. No wonder entertainment stars choose New England. Boston is considered the heart of the region, a bustling city with deep historical roots. This background information is going to be important. I'm not just randomly telling you about the weather and how peaceful and prosperous this region generally is. Crime rates here really are low, and there are still towns where people literally don't lock their doors at night. Well, more accurately, they didn't used to lock them. Paige Fannin was 35 years old in early 2025 and worked as a hairstylist in Connecticut. Family and co-workers remembered her as a cheerful, kind, and caring woman. Paige was last seen on March 4, 2025. Just 2 days later, on March 6, while searching for another missing person near the Norwalk River in western Connecticut, someone spotted clothing left by the water. Nearby, in the river itself, they found Paige's body. The circumstances of her death remain unclear. There was no announcement about signs of violence or any clear cause of death. It was as if she had simply undressed and walked into the water. The fact that her clothes were left by the water raises some troubling questions. Was she alone? Did someone force her to undress and enter the river? Could she have gone into the water voluntarily, maybe for a swim? It's important to understand that early March is definitely not swimming season in Connecticut. It's still way too cold for that, so one popular theory is that it might have been suicide. But on the GoFundMe page created in Paige's memory, there was no mention of psychological issues or depression. Instead, loved ones wrote about her with warmth and admiration. If you had the honor of knowing Paige, you would know how genuinely she cared for those she loved, her family wrote. What if someone was actually involved in her death? The GoFundMe campaign has already exceeded its $12,000 goal. So far, there are no new details in Paige Fannin's case. And that was just the beginning of a series of horrific discoveries in the region. On that same day, March 6, 2025, in neighboring Massachusetts near the town of Plymouth, a hunter searching for deer antlers in the woods stumbled upon a human skull. The skull was missing its lower jaw. The identity of the deceased, as well as their gender and age, hasn't been determined yet. The cause of death also remains unknown, but the fact remains, a human skull was found in the woods. What happened to this person? While investigators stay silent, 2 families in New England are living in limbo. They believe the skull might belong to one of their loved ones. It could be 54-year-old Sandra Crispo, who disappeared on August 7, 2019, in the town of Hanson. She had moved closer to her daughter to help with her grandchildren. Sandra was last seen when her son-in-law gave her a ride to a gas station a few days before she disappeared. A few days later, they found her dog at home with no food or water. Sandra herself was nowhere to be found. Her keys and shoes were also missing. The air conditioner in the house was still running, as if she had just stepped outside for a minute and never came back. We live with this sense of uncertainty every day. This grief has no end. The pain comes back again and again, her daughter says. The second potential victim is 27-year-old Brittany McCormack from Hanover. She was last seen in July 2021 at her mother's house. Brittany had 2 children. Her family described her as very trusting and said she had psychological issues. It's unclear whether this was a diagnosed mental disorder or something else. Her family offered a $40,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. But no information ever came forward. Both families are hoping that forensic testing will provide some answers. But so far, there are none. The skull and Paige's body were found on the same day in towns hundreds of miles apart. A terrifying coincidence. The story of Susan Womser is one of the most horrific in this chain of events. It all happened in Groton, Connecticut. On March 19th, police received a report about a suspicious object at a bus stop near a cemetery by Route 11. It was a black suitcase giving off a sharp, putrid smell. Local residents had been complaining about it for several days. When they opened the suitcase, they found a woman's torso wrapped in a garbage bag. The autopsy showed the body had likely been there since mid-February, over a month. Forensic examination provided an important lead. They determined that the victim had Turner syndrome, a rare genetic condition that causes certain physical characteristics including short stature, a short neck, small chin, and broad chest. Later, they were able to identify the victim as 58-year-old Susan Womser. She did indeed have this condition. Police got their break when Susan's sister contacted them, worried about her disappearance. When she saw the news report about a woman's body being found, she immediately feared the worst and called police. Neighbors later got involved too, telling officers that the woman had been living with a boyfriend. According to Groton Police Chief David Burton, the murder, which this clearly was, most likely happened either right there on the cemetery grounds or in a house nearby. 6 weeks later, they arrested 68-year-old Donald Kofola, Susan's live-in boyfriend. He had been her neighbor before, then moved away, but later returned and moved in with her since he had nowhere else to live. He was charged with murder, tampering with evidence, and desecrating a corpse. Notably, when arrested, Kofola was in the hospital. He'd been diagnosed with end-stage pancreatic cancer, and doctors weren't hiding the fact he didn't have much time left. Still, police searched Susan and Kofola's house and found horrifying evidence. Blood-soaked furniture, stains on walls, a baseball bat hidden behind a bookshelf with hair stuck to it, and Susan's personal belongings. Later, a witness reported that Kofola had confessed the murder to him, saying he did it with that same bat. The motive? Missing drugs worth $200. From his hospice bed, Kofola decided to tell police what really happened. His confession shocked even veteran investigators. At first, he just left Susan in the apartment without even trying to cover up what he'd done. He continued living normally, seemingly oblivious to the smell and decomposition. Nearly 2 weeks passed before he finally grabbed a handsaw, the same tool police would later discover in his apartment. The torso went into the suitcase. He stuffed the remaining body parts into garbage bags and disposed of them in various dumpsters around town. Those bags and their gruesome contents remain missing. Kofola was jailed on $1 million bond with a trial date set for June 10. He never made it. He died on April 25, effectively ending the case. Authorities haven't found any links between this killing and the other incidents, treating it as a savage but standalone tragedy. The cemetery where the suitcase turned up sat just a few hundred yards from Susan's home. Given his terminal condition, Kofola likely lacked the physical strength to transport the body any distance. Even though this particular case seems straightforward, Susan's murder is still being included in the list of potential victims of an unknown serial killer. Why, you might ask? I'm wondering the same thing. There are those who question whether someone with such advanced cancer could overpower a woman, dismember her, and carry her in a suitcase to the cemetery. That would certainly take tremendous strength. But let's keep going. Meanwhile, another case was unfolding in a different part of Connecticut. On March 20th, the body of 59-year-old Dennis Leary was discovered in New Haven. She had moved to the state a few months earlier to care for her sick mother. Dennis vanished from her mother's house, and it was a house, not an apartment, on September 30, 2024, under extremely bizarre circumstances. Late that evening, around 10:30 p.m., an unknown person picked her up by car. She disappeared from her room, which was locked from the inside. Apparently, she climbed out through the window. It seems like she deliberately didn't want anyone to know she was leaving. Dennis had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, though the severity of her condition and whether she was taking medication remains unclear. According to relatives, she had met with the mysterious man who picked her up before, literally the day before. After one of these meetings, she even asked her son to turn off the location tracking on her phone. Her son complied with the request. The identity of this man who came for her has never been established, and her family admitted they simply didn't remember his face. He looked completely unremarkable. Who was he? It appears he's still out there. What was he doing? Dennis's body was found 6 months later in a wooded area near a residential neighborhood. The state of decomposition was so severe that investigators couldn't initially determine gender or age. The cause of death also remains undetermined. Police officially found no signs of foul play. However, based on the body's condition, death occurred shortly after her disappearance, likely in early October 2024. This case raises countless questions. It seems to break the pattern, yet somehow fits into it at the same time. And the pattern itself is just bizarre, you have to admit. This mystery man, an adult woman. What if other people disappeared during that same time period? After all, we're only discussing Dennis Leary's story because her body was found. But what if others are still missing? What if someone else vanished during that same time frame, left home and never returned, and their remains haven't been discovered yet? What if that man in the car wasn't just some acquaintance of hers? What if there are more bodies hidden right now in some other forest, buried under layers of leaves? A few days later, on March 26, another tragic discovery shook Rhode Island. Near the town of Foster, the remains of a 56-year-old woman were found. Her name hasn't been released at her family's request. She had been missing since August 2024, and her relatives immediately stated they don't believe in the serial killer theory and know exactly who's responsible for her death. Furthermore, they specifically asked that her name not be included in victim lists being discussed online and in the media regarding the suspected serial killer. This position sparked intense controversy. True crime communities on social media are still debating this. Could the family's refusal to discuss the case or even mention her name be a way to deflect attention? That's the theory some commenters are pushing. Some even suggest that this kind of stance might point to involvement by someone close to her. Of course, these situations require careful consideration, and the family might genuinely know who did this and what actually happened, simply choosing not to share that information with anyone except police, perhaps to avoid interfering with the investigation. Plus, they're in pain. They've lost someone close and beloved. But I heard on a podcast that sometimes family members do cover for each other and ask to have information scrubbed from websites or videos removed. The host said that when this happens, you can usually sense it, it becomes obvious, and police probably hint that this person is of interest. But that's extremely rare. But let's admit it, these subtle details right on the edge are exactly what fuel public interest as people try to connect all the events and look for clues or hidden angles. Meanwhile, new facts and discoveries kept surfacing. Just a few days later, on March 29, 38-year-old Stephen Gash went missing near Groton, Connecticut. He was an avid hiker who knew the local trails and was an experienced outdoorsman. That day he headed into the woods wearing a bright yellow jacket and never came back. His car was found by the trail, with his phone lying nearby. The search was massive. They brought in dogs, drones, helicopters, but it was all fruitless. Stephen was never found. Could he have fallen victim to a possible serial killer? Why was he even added to this list of probable victims? There's an answer to these questions. The thing is, a few days later, this story appeared online. A man who wanted to remain anonymous posted in a group dedicated to this New England serial killer case. In his post, he described a frightening encounter he had while walking in the Bluff Point area, also in Groton. Here's his post.
I probably should have posted this right away, but I wasn't sure what to do. Especially now, with people disappearing and bodies turning up left and right. This happened on Thursday, around 11 in the morning. I was walking the Bluff Point Trail, carrying my dad's ashes to spread them at his favorite spot. About 10 minutes into the hike, I got this weird anxious feeling, and I distinctly heard a voice. My father's voice, telling me to turn around right now. So I did. There, maybe 50 feet behind me, was this person in a long hooded cloak walking straight toward me. Nobody else around. It was drizzling, and at first I figured it was just another hiker. But something told me to stop, head toward the water, and watch. So I stepped aside. The guy came closer and stopped. He stared at me with these empty black eyes. Then he pulled out a folding knife. That's when I knew this was fight or flight time. Don't know how, but I ended up with a rock in my right hand. I was ready to defend myself if I had to. I yelled, "You picked the wrong guy, buddy." But he didn't react. Didn't say a word, didn't wave the knife, didn't even twitch. He just kept staring at me. I heard my father's voice again, "Don't mess with this one, get out of here." So I started backing away. He started following me. I picked up the pace, never taking my eyes off him. When I got to the restrooms, I turned around. He was gone. I kept walking, looking back every few yards. Then I saw him. He was walking on the parallel trail along the water. I got to the parking lot where there was now a truck and a van that hadn't been there before. Made it to my car, locked the door, grabbed my son's baseball bat and called the cops. Told them everything exactly as it happened, gave them a description of the stranger. As I was driving away, I saw him again. He literally emerged from the bushes. Police promised to send a unit right away, but I wasn't sticking around to wait. I just want to warn people, something's not right about that place. If I hadn't been alert, if I hadn't felt my father there with me, this could have ended much worse. Stay safe out there, especially if you're hiking alone.
This story sounds like something straight out of a thriller. But the chilling part? It's real. The person who first shared it claimed they even filed a police report and described the suspicious man in detail. And guess what? That report actually exists. Verified. The story quickly went viral, especially because it happened right around the time Stephen went missing. And here's where the nightmare begins. What if this man really is connected, maybe not to all but to at least some of the deaths and disappearances we've seen across New England? What if there are far more stories like this, and we only hear about a fraction of them? And then, almost as if on cue, just days after Stephen vanished, a string of grisly discoveries began. 3 in a row, each more unsettling than the last. April 10th, Framingham, Massachusetts. Firefighters battling a brush fire stumble across a human skeleton. Who was it? How did they die? No answers. Then, Killingly, Connecticut. Overgrown railroad tracks. Human remains discovered nearby. Again, no ID, no cause of death, no details. Even the name of the town sounds like it was pulled from a horror movie. April 25th, Rhode Island. A man out on a boat finds a body floating in the water. Police can't say the gender, identity, or even an approximate time of death. DNA testing is the only hope, and that takes months. And that was just the beginning. Later in April, a woman named Megan Meredith was found near a bike path in Springfield, Massachusetts. She was alive when police arrived, but unconscious. She died shortly afterward. And here's where it gets eerie. Police refused to say what kind of injuries she had. The DA assured the public there's no threat to the community. But if no suspect has been caught, how can they be so sure? Some even wonder if police are using Megan's death as a psychological ploy. Imagine telling the killer, what if she said something before she died? Enough to make him paranoid, maybe slip up. But officially, cops have confirmed she never regained consciousness. Megan became the third case classified as homicide. The list kept growing. April 23, Salem, Massachusetts. Behind a Walmart, two men's bodies were found, partially buried, as if someone had tried and failed to hide them. A 30-year-old homeless man named Jay Blodgett was arrested for the double murder. But people who knew him described him as quiet, kind, the last person you'd ever expect. And the big question remains, how could one homeless man overpower two grown men who didn't even live in Salem? What were they even doing there? No clear answers. And it didn't stop. Bodies kept turning up. Rivers, forests, even near cemeteries. Yes, some of the cases are solved. A man in New Haven confessed to killing not only Naisha Mendez but also 3 others in Puerto Rico. A 17-year-old was arrested for the murder of Sonny Stewart in Maine. But the rest? They don't fit. The creepiest part is that there's no consistent pattern. No single victim type. Men and women. Young and old. Some shot, others strangled, others beaten. Some cases look like accidents or suicides. So what is this? Just a wave of grim coincidences? Or something darker, someone smart enough to change their methods, switch up their victims, and keep everyone guessing?